In this video, we will look at using the Overcrowd plugin for Unreal to create a large number of metahumans and place them into a medieval setting, such as a village or a town. This video makes use of content in various YouTube videos, such as those from the Overcrowd plugin. The first step is to set up the metahumans and the clothing assets so that it can be used by the Overcrowd system. We start by creating a metahuman character blueprint. Within this blueprint, we go to the presets and choose the character that we want to work from. As we are building our own wardrobe, we go to the hair and accessories section to remove the default clothing. To work with this particular asset pack for clothing, we need to go to the body section followed by model and then fix compatibility. We select the largest height and the medium body size for men. We now work on the head. We need to reset the head size, and then in the preset parameter section we need to drag in the head for the metahuman that we've been using. We now move around all of the points on the face and drag out so we align with the preset face that we want to use. This is a bit of a long-winded process, but we need to do it so we can return the head to the shape that we want to use for our preset. When we've finished with the head and reshaping it, we need to move on to the stage where we can now create the control rig for our metahuman. Creating the control rig can also take some time. Next up, we download the textures for the metahuman, which might also take a reasonable amount of time. The last stage is to assemble our metahuman, which will create a blueprint for our metahuman character. We can open this blueprint to take a look at the metahuman character that's been created for us and we can now use. We start with the head meshes of interest, right click on them and select Scripted Asset Actions Overcrowd and generate LODs. Keep the default options and click OK. Next up, we need to create the VAT mesh pairings. We select the head meshes, right click, Scripted Asset Actions Overcrowd, create VAT mesh pairing. We need to add a gameplay tag, so here we select Overcrowd, body part, head. Click OK to create the VAT mesh pairings. We follow the same process for the body, where we first create LODs and then the VAT mesh pairing. In this case, we only need to do the process for one of the bodies. Here we use Overcrowd body part body as our gameplay tag. We now need to follow the same process for the clothing that we're going to use for our metahumans. There are 5 general items of clothing here: the chest, gloves, hats, pants and shoes. Separately for each set of items, we need to go through the same process, select all of the skeletal meshes of interest, right click Scripted Asset Actions Overcrowd and create LODs. Once that's done, we follow exactly the same process to create the VAT mesh pairing, and we need to select unique gameplay tags for each of the 5 types of item. As I'm anticipating mixing a number of different clothing packs, I decided to create a hierarchy beyond the overcrowd body part to have civilian, men, and then the 5 categories, which are called torso, gloves, hat, pants and shoes. Once we've worked through all of the clothing items, we need to adapt the materials for these clothings so that they can work with the Overcrowd vat mesh system. We need to work through the Metahuman materials one by one and find the parent materials for each part of the Metahuman. When you open the Overcrowd dialog box, in the top right corner you can find a clipboard icon, which when you click on it, you copy the Overcrowd material function nodes into the copy buffer, which we can then paste into our material setups. When the final node is a material attributes node, you can just push the Overcrowd nodes before that point and reconnect the node wires before and after. Rinse and repeat this process for all of the material slots. In some cases you only need 2 of the nodes, and here you need to make sure that the normal goes into the start and then goes out into the material setup, and also that the world position offset is connected, as this is an important part of the Overcrowd system. We now need to follow the same process for all of the parent materials in the clothing library. If we're lucky, there will only be a small number of parent materials that we need to adjust with the Overcrowd material nodes. We are now ready to create our first wardrobe, using the skeletal meshes for the head and body of the Metahuman and the static meshes created by the vat mesh process of Overcrowd. We have also updated all of the materials that we're using so they work with the Overcrowd system. Our next step is to create an Overcrowd wardrobe using the assets that we've been working on so far. Open the Overcrowd control and then click on the wardrobe icon in the top left. Click on the plus icon to add a new wardrobe to the array and then select a gameplay tag. Here I'm adding one called Civilian Men Hats, as it describes the group that is going to be created. We then need to click apply to create the new wardrobe, and back in the Overcrowd window we select this new wardrobe so that we can work on it. We now need to add clothing and accessories to our wardrobe. Click on the clothes hanger icon to open up a display of all of the things that can be added to this wardrobe. Note that by using gameplay tags appropriately, we can divide the various clothing assets into their own groups. This can be a bit of a tedious process if you've got a large number of clothing and accessories that you want to add to your wardrobe. Click on one and then control click on others to add them to those that you want to use, and then click OK when we're done. Now that the wardrobe is complete, we can start to add metahumans to our scene. Now that we've created our wardrobe, we have to add some animations to it before we spawn the crowd. To start off with, we're going to create some idle animations so the characters are stood in place and do not move. We take some idle animations and then retarget them to the skeleton that we are using for the metahuman in our wardrobe. For this example, I've taken 3 idle animations and retargeted them to the metahuman skeleton. Post the retargeting process, I have created a folder and subfolders to organise these animations. For a specific wardrobe, the animations that we select will then be allocated at random to the metahumans that are spawned by Overcrowd. Now that the animations are ready, we need to add them to our wardrobe's animations. In the animation sources, we need to add an array element for each animation. Within each animation array element, the anim sequence is the animation that's going to be applied, and then we need to add a unique animation tag for each animation. Now that we have our wardrobe and all the animations, we need to bake them for the Overcrowd simulation. We do this by clicking on the film reel icon to start the baking process. When the process has been completed, we get a little dialog box that tells us the vertex animation textures are baked and assigned. Click OK, save, and we're ready to go. Click on the pencil to open the Overseen tab to start populating our world. Click on Edit Mode Create, make sure the default wardrobe is the one we want to use. Click on the brush item and then Control left click to start placing metahumans. This will create a Niagara system for generating and controlling the crowd. Once it's compiled, we can switch back to the other window and see the crowd has been generated. By default, a number of visualizations are shown as diagnostics for the crowd simulation. Process for adding root motion animations is similar. We need to find the animation that we want and then retarget it to our metahuman skeleton. We then need to ensure that root motion is enabled for the animations that we have retargeted to the metahuman skeleton. For each of our root motion animations, we need to open up the animation itself, and on the left hand side scroll down until we find the Enable Root Motion checkbox, and then make sure that root motion is enabled. Open the Overcrowd dialog box, and within our wardrobe we add the root motion animations in exactly the same way that we added the non-root motion animations, and we need to ensure that there is a unique gameplay tag for each of our animations and that the skeleton is correctly set. We then need to bake our animations. We then click on the Bake Root Motion and Anim Notifies Only. This will then kick the simulation back into life with our root animations added. We add some metahumans from our wardrobe to the scene, and if they don't appear initially, we can click the Refresh Scene button in the Overseen section of the Overcrowd plugin. We will now look at adding the Overcrowd metahumans that we've created in our wardrobe to a medieval village scene. This scene is taken from a medieval village pack that is available on the Fab store. The village scene itself has got various tracks on it, which we can use to add navigation splines to get the root motion animations to move the metahumans around the scene. Within the Overcrowd part, we go to the Overseen tab and we use our wardrobe and the brush to create some metahumans in our scene. After the simulation has been updated and an optional refresh of the scene, we now see that our village has got a number of the Overcrowd metahumans spawned in it, some of which are standing idle and others are moving due to the root motion animation. To add a navigation spline, we need to go to the Overseen tab, and then in the Create Edit mode we change to Crowd Navigation. In case we want to have separate navigation splines, we need to add a gameplay tag. Here we add one Overcrowd metadata root_1. The process of adding a navigation spline can be a little bit tricky. We go into selecting the brush mode, then hold down Control and move the mouse around and various points will be added. We now have a medieval village where some of the metahumans are starting to move towards the track that has been generated. With a bit of fine tuning we can improve the navigation and thin out the crowd slightly, so we've now got a slightly better village with our humans wandering around, but there's plenty of scope for improvement. If we want to add accessories to our metahumans, such as weapons and shields, we can follow the approach shown through the Overcrowd tutorials. First up, we add our metahuman blueprint to the scene and make sure that it's at the origin, XYZ000. We then create a level sequence and add our metahuman to this level sequence. We will be adding an animation to the level sequence so that we can position the accessories such as a sword in the right hand of the metahuman and then the shield on the left forearm. When the metahuman is on the timeline of our level sequence, we can delete the control rig for the head and the body. We click on the plus icon next to the body and then select an animation that we want to use for positioning accessories. Here we are using a combat idle pose. We will start by aligning the weapons. We go into the content browser, find one of the weapons and drag it into our scene. We then need to center that weapon at 000. We need to move the hand axe so it's relative to the right hand. We do this by adding an attached track to the axe. We select our metahuman blueprint, choose body and choose the hand_R socket. We are now at the fiddly part where we need to move the axe around until it fits snugly into the right hand of our metahuman. Once we are happy with the new location, we can move the animation forward and backwards to look at how the hand axe moves with the hand. We now need to move the pivot point for the hand axe object. To do this, we select our hand axe, change from selection to modelling mode and then go to X-form. Within X-form we choose pivot points, zero out the location's rotations and click accept. Now that the pivot point has been changed on our static mesh, we need to convert it into a skeletal mesh. Right click on the object, choose Convert to Skeletal Mesh. We then need to choose Creation Type Use Existing Skeletal Mesh, choose the skeletal mesh for our metahuman, so the body mesh for man 3 here, and then the binding bone name which is hand_R. We then click Convert. We now need to perform the Overcrowd scripted asset actions. We first create the LODs. And secondly, the VAT mesh pairing. We use a gameplay tag of melee R to indicate that this is the accessory that goes in the right hand. We can follow the same process to add the shields using the melee L gameplay tag, and here we will also be using the forearm L rather than the hand_L as our sockets for positioning the shield. We then create a new wardrobe, military man, weapon and shield. We add the body mesh, face mesh and melee R and melee L for the weapons and shields respectively. We then bake the animations in preparation for adding the metahumans to our scene. Once the vertex animation textures have been baked and assigned, we can move over to the Overseen tab to start adding metahumans to the level. In the Overseen tab, we go to the Create Edit Mode and Crowd Placement, click on the brush to turn it green and then drag it over the level to add metahumans to the scene. Last up, we take a brief look at some larger scale crowds within a medieval town scene. So that wraps up our look at the Overcrowd plugin for Unreal Engine for creating large crowd scenes.